Look, I talk to all kinds of normal people. I hang with normal people, as I know you do. And even the ones who aren't hurting definitely feel like their dollar doesn't go near as far. When I get with friends and family, they complain about the vacation they can't afford this year. They complain they can't go get that new car they're toughing out another year. That back to school supplies were twice as much. My neighbor told me twice as much this year as last year. So we hear that life is more expensive, meaning everyone's standard of living has been reduced, yet it's growing. What's happening? What am I seeing?
Yeah, well, it's first of all, I'm impressed that you called me normal because usually people call me a little bit crazy, but I'll take the normalcy. But in people's lives, we are having what is called, or at least what I'm calling, individual or personal recessions, where the average American, Main Street America, is really carrying the economy. So it's not that people are cutting back necessarily and seeing that growth slow. They're taking it on personally, which means that they have lower amounts of savings, which means they have more credit card debt, which is consistent with what we're seeing, right, in terms of credit cards, $1 trillion on the aggregate, which is a record. So people are really taking that on. And because they still have jobs, they feel like, well, maybe I can still, get that vacation in, or I can still do this thing, even though it's costing me a ton. But at some point that taps out. Either there isn't the credit availability given to them. They decide that they don't have enough in savings, or, God forbid, we're seeing a little bit more tightness in the labor market, and maybe that becomes a concern. So that can only go on for so long. At the same time, you have to remember that part of the reason the GDP is expanding is because the government is spending so much money. I mean, they're just spending like drunken sailors, with no disrespect meant to the drunken sailors. And so you have that aspect going on as well. But this whole idea that the Fed is going to be able to get us out of this without get inflation down without completely wrecking the economy just seems still very much like a pipe dream. And nobody has come up with any sort of a realistic plan to make sure that the average American feels like they can get a little bit of breathing room, whether it's for buying a house, whether it's just going about their daily lives, groceries and basic cost of living, like you said, back to school. People are hurting, and I'm just not hearing any discussion of that because, the people who are the elite and the rich and the well-connected really aren't hurting that much. And so, they don't really care.
Carol, something that I think has national implications that other people don't is what you just brought up, the credit card debt. I saw personal credit card debt, $1 trillion, the highest amount ever. And to where a lot of people watching this right now might scoff at that. I don't care. I didn't run up my credit cards. Mine aren't maxed out. What do I care? Carol, if we have a personal bankruptcy problem that widespread in this country, that becomes an everyone problem, doesn't it?
It sure does. And you have to remember that it's not just that the overall balances are high, but the interest rates are through the roof. I've seen that the averages are anywhere in the 22 to 24% range, which is just absolute, lunacy. And so people are not only paying more in terms of putting it on credit, but the financing cost of that. They're taking a cue, by the way, from the government. Oh, let's just put it on our credit cards and we don't care what it is and we'll just finance it later. They're getting much, much higher rates. And so, yes, if that ends up collapsing and people are hurting, that brings down the whole economy because, as you and I have talked about before, the consumer makes up 70% of the economy. And so when the consumer no longer can spend, the government can only plug that hole so much. But if the individual is hurting, then it impacts the economy. And then it just becomes a domino. It means that, people aren't buying, then the businesses aren't doing as well. And then the businesses lay off people and they don't have money to put back in the economy. And that becomes a vicious cycle. So that becomes a very ugly proposition. And the idea that the Fed and the government is putting this on our individual backs to, keep this economy going when it is really breaking the backs of Main Street America and the backbone of this country, is just absolute insanity. And we will have to pay the price. Like this cannot continue to go on like this, and everything just comes out rainbows and sunshine on the other end. And I hope it's not going to be too painful, above and beyond the pain that we've already been feeling. But it's not a good trajectory. And that's why we really need to have some serious fiscal discussions in this country. Unfortunately, other than folks like yourself who like to highlight these things, everybody's distracted by absolute nothingness, by stupid insanity. The fiscal foundation, when that is broken, that is something that can't just change on a whim. We really need to take it more seriously.
For too long, we've been led to believe that communism is a thing of the past. But the truth is, communism is alive. It's here, and it's infiltrating every aspect of American life. Introducing the Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly, the practical guide for patriots ready to defend our nation from its most dangerous enemy. Discover the shocking extent of communist infiltration in our education system, their alliance with American corporations, and the twisted truth behind environmentalism. This eye-opening book exposes the true face of communism and empowers you to fight back. Join the fight for freedom. Pre-order your copy of the Anti-Communist Manifesto today by going to jessekelleybook.com.